abandoned buildings, ghost towns, and homes away from home that have something terribly wrong with them. Today I've got some creepy urban exploration stories that will bring us to old schools, strange homes, and demon-infested ghost towns. Now let's begin. Back in high school and early college, my friends and I used to explore abandoned buildings and stretches of land in our free time. I'll be using fake names for the sake of privacy. Our group consisted of 5 people: Will, who often wouldn't show up; Jake, who drove us everywhere; John, my best friend in the group; Anna, Jake's girlfriend; and me. Before Anna came into the picture, I'd been the only girl, and as a very small girl, I was always eager to prove that I wasn't easily scared, even though I was. We went and explored places all over the southeastern U.S., some of our favorite places being mental hospitals or funeral homes. When I talk about it now, people always assume those places were the scariest, but they weren't. The scariest places ended up being the schools, hands down. In all the other places we went, trudging across the sewer-like basements of mental hospitals, climbing over coffins and through hearses in funeral homes, finding dried blood on farming equipment and old barns, none of it compared to the fear and dread that came with entering these 2 abandoned schools. Both these schools were in our hometown, one downtown and one midtown. I'll start with the one in midtown. We actually went to this one during the day. The police mostly camped out those places at night, so we were less likely to get caught during the day. There were some homeless people outside the building, but we managed to sneak around them just fine, and they had no clue we'd gotten inside the building. We had rules in our adventuring group. Rule number 1, no vandalism. We never broke into any place we went. If we couldn't find an already open way in, we turned around and went somewhere else. Rule number 2, keep quiet. We did not want to alert anyone that we were there at all. Our purpose was to have fun exploring and to take cool pictures for Instagram. And rule number 3, before we could have fun exploring, we had to clear the building. That usually meant Jake, or if Will was there, Jake and Will, going through the building with a flashlight and investigating every room, every closet and cupboard, any place where a creature or person could be hiding out of sight. As we got more experienced, we would have walkie-talkies and would all fan out, everyone clearing at once with a flashlight and a weapon. No guns, just blunt objects or knives, in the rare case that we'd have to defend ourselves. We never did have to use them. Both of these occurrences were fairly early on in our career of exploring. We entered the Midtown School, which wasn't insanely dilapidated compared to some other places we visited. We could hear the homeless people outside talking, so we made sure to keep our voices down as Jake and Will cleared the building's first floor. Everything was good, so John, Anna, and I began to explore the floor while the other 2 continued to clear upstairs. Then they let us know that everything up there was good too. So after seeing everything there was to see downstairs, we headed up. The upstairs floor wasn't anything particularly special. There were classrooms and offices, and a little alcove at the end of the hall with a metal ladder leading up to the roof. The whole floor had already been cleared, but we all swept through the rooms again, looking for anything of interest. The rooms were pretty bare except for some old papers, desks, and chairs, and it was clear from the intact windows that it could not have been abandoned very long. That's important to note. None of the windows were broken, none of them were hanging open. They all were fully intact. We ended up going up to the roof, being careful not to be too visible or too loud up there. We had some fun and took some cool pictures. Then Jake, Will, and I, in that order, descended the metal ladder back into the second floor. When we got down, the 3 of us all froze. We had heard something that sounded like shuffling footsteps in one of the classrooms to our left, just a few doors down. Will and I yelled up to John and Anna not to come down, to just wait a minute and stay quiet, while Jake moved forward with his weapon to investigate the room. Will and I were ready to run in and help him if needed, our eyes focused on the door he disappeared through. The door he went through was to one of those big classrooms that had 2 entry doors, one at the front of the class and one at the back. He'd gone in the back door, and we heard him moving around and through, opening the closets loudly to try to scare the intruder out, if there was one. At this point, we weren't hiding our presence. Whoever was there had definitely heard us, and the fact that they weren't showing themselves meant it was either another person exploring just like us, or a homeless person who didn't like confrontation. We could still hear all the same voices outside, so we doubted it was a homeless person, which arguably worried us more. After a minute or 2, Jake emerged from the farther door at the front of the classroom and began walking back towards us, the back door still ajar. He started to speak, something along the lines of, "No one's in there, come on." But he was cut off as the back door he'd left ajar, the one between us and Jake, slammed shut violently. It had been all the way open, not cracked, and it swung as though someone had thrown it. Jake was at least 10 feet away from it, and Will and I were even farther. Both Jake and Will immediately ran to the door, yanking it open and calling out, "Who's in there?" But I knew no one was, or at least no one that we could see. The windows were shut so it wasn't wind. There was no air conditioning because there was no power, no one was near it. Jake had just cleared the room, and as they cleared it a second time, it became clear to Will and I that we'd seen something we truly couldn't explain, something we believed to be paranormal. We left soon after, mine and Will's nerves on edge. A couple of weeks after that, we went to the downtown school at night. Not our smartest choice, but we were young and not too bright. The school had all kinds of forum posts made about it, ranging from people seeing pairs of red eyes staring back at them from the back of the auditorium if you stood on the stage, to stories of the janitor hanging himself in the basement. We didn't really know what was true and what wasn't, but we showed up hoping to find out. Jake didn't believe in ghosts at all, Will and I did, though Will was much less respectful of them than I was. Anna did, or at least I think she did, based on how this particular night went. I'm not sure where John stood on all of it, probably somewhere in the middle. We found a lot of cool stuff in the school, including some old tape recordings of students elementary school age, talking about how sad they were that the school was closing and what they would miss. It was a creepy kind of cool. After debunking the red eyes post we'd read, what we ended up seeing was just two little lights that for some reason never went off at the back of the auditorium. We headed for the basement. It turned out the basement had been the library. Books and shelves were scattered all over the floor, with a suspiciously large empty area in the center of the room where the janitor supposedly died. Will asked all of us to turn out our lights so he could try to talk to the ghost of the janitor, which after some convincing we all did. At first Will was just going to coax the spirit to talk to us, but after getting no response, he began mocking it and cursing at it. John and I told him to chill out, but he kept going, amused by it. Anna began to cry into Jake's shoulder, clearly wanting it all to stop, and eventually Will gave up and turned his light back on. "That blows, let's get out of here," he said, but as he turned toward the stairs, we all heard it, a low, sad moaning coming from the stairwell. Prior to this, we had cleared the entire building, and the only way in we'd found had been by climbing up and through a second-story window. This voice, however, sounded frail, like maybe it was hurt. No one like that could have entered the building, especially not without making enough noise to alert us all. We froze, listening, as the moaning continued and was joined by a dragging sound, like something being lugged up the stairs and thumping on each step. Will, excited at this, ran forward and flashed his light up the stairs. Immediately the sounds ended. He and Jake led the way after the sound, trying to find where the person had gone, clearing the rooms as they went, but they found no one. John and I looked out the windows as we continued, keeping an eye out for anyone who might be running away from the building, but we didn't see anybody. Out of all the places we went, all the decay we saw, the souls in the schools scared us the most. Story number 2. One May, my husband, my 8-year-old granddaughter, and I took a long weekend camping trip to a popular state park a few hours away. I planned a variety of fun things to do, including a drive to a ghost town, which I discovered on the map while planning the trip. I couldn't find much information on the ghost town from Google, and that made it even more intriguing. We set up camp fairly early on the first day, deciding to start our adventure with the ghost town first. We mapped the coordinates on our GPS, and off we went. The Tulane Mountain Road winded up and up, deeper and deeper, until the sun was blocked out by trees. Eventually, it became a one-lane road, and all signs of civilization began to get farther and farther apart, until there was basically no trace. We were chatty and excited to get up there, wondering what it was going to be like. We drove for miles with no signs of life, or human life for that matter. My husband began to get a little concerned over this. We did have our granddaughter with us, after all, and we were venturing into the middle of nowhere. The what-if started when the road went from a one-lane paved road to a much slimmer gravel road that barely fit our truck. If another vehicle would come from the other direction, we'd be in trouble, because the road ran along the mountain cliff with no guardrails and nowhere to pull over or turn around safely. Our excitement diminished, and concern lay thick in the air. Eventually, though, after a much longer drive than anticipated, we came to a stop sign at the end of the gravel road. The trees ended, and the sun shone bright again. The road continued onto a two-lane road, and aside from still no signs of human life anywhere, we all breathed a sigh of relief. Then the GPS told us to take the next right, and we'd be at our destination. As soon as we turned off that road, we were once again on a one-lane gravel road, and immediately saw the old town. The old weathered gray buildings were quite a sight. We parked, and we all got out of the truck. We also took our 2 dogs with us, a large chocolate lab and a feisty Australian shepherd. These dogs immediately were on point, pulling us towards the town, but I soon noticed that the Aussie's hackles went up. Even so, we explored the main road, all the while I felt watched. One particular house came into view that was much newer than the older buildings, and this house looked as though someone actually could be living in it still. As we approached it, I noticed the front door was wide open, and then I thought I saw movement inside when my granddaughter suddenly asked me if anyone lived there. I said, "I think so. I mean, it looks like someone does." In my mind, I was thinking maybe it was the caretaker of the ghost town, if there was such a thing. We walked past the house and a creepy broken swing set, and right into the heart of this ghost town. The streets were lined with old gray buildings, some standing tall and others caved in. I snapped a few photos, but couldn't shake that feeling of being watched. Hubby said he was going to get some window shots of a few of the buildings, curious to see what was inside. I told my husband I didn't want to venture in any farther. Though we both had our concealed carry licenses and were both armed, me with a 9mm and him with a 1911, I still felt unsafe. I felt worse and worse about having my granddaughter out here. All of a sudden a wave of uneasiness came over me. I just wanted to leave. He was on and off the porches snapping photos inside the buildings when the Aussie began making a low grumble, staring towards the upper windows of the porch he was standing on. I yelled to him, "Okay, I'm done, let's go," and I began to walk back toward the truck. He jogged back and joined us, and as we passed the newer house again, I noticed the front door was now closed. My granddaughter saw it too, and said it out loud. Just then, our Aussie went nuts. She almost got away from me, launching towards that house, snarling, growling, making sounds I'd never heard her make before. The lab was on alert, hackles up too, her eyes darting back and forth as the town steadily grew farther behind us. We all then climbed back in the truck and decided to find a different way back, rather than that long, windy, one-lane quad trail we came in on. Later that evening, after we tucked our granddaughter into her bed in the camper, my husband and I sat by the fire, going over the pics we took that day. When he came to his window pics, his smile waned. He began zooming in on them, one by one, and with fear in his eyes, handed the phone to me. Very clearly in the photos were short, light gray creatures. Large heads, large black eyes. On the forehead and on the sides of the head were small nubs, or possibly small button-type horns. Some looked to have wings, and the wings were lined with nubs as well. As I scrolled through the photos, all I could think of was what could have happened to us. Our precious granddaughter was with us there, and it could have gotten really ugly had these things decided to attack us. Luckily, though, they didn't. They stayed hidden inside those old buildings and never bothered us. I wonder who or what was in the newer house. Was it also one of those things, or a human who lived among them? Possibly a homeless person who stumbled across this place, not knowing what lurks outside the walls he chose to make his temporary home. Will he be making it out of the ghost town tomorrow? My questions went on, but I never did get answers, and I never will go back. I have included one zoomed photo. This was the pic taken of the upper window, just as the Aussie began to growl. We never saw anything while there, but it was very bright, and the windows had a glare, as you can see in this pic. Story number 3. The closing date had finally arrived for our dream house. My husband and I had bought a beautiful home in the mountains, fulfilling a lifelong dream of escaping the city, to be able to hear the sound of wind blowing through Ponderosa and nothing else. I've always thought I lived in the wrong place, quite possibly pursued the wrong jobs that kept me in the city. I was so eager to see our new home, so since my husband was working, I packed up my things, took my dog, Y, and set out by myself. It was a long drive from where we were living. I stopped at the title company, signed off on the last few papers, and unceremoniously was given keys to the house. My dog hopped into the back of the SUV, and we headed onto the highway as dusk was settling in. The house was remote, no cell phone service, so I made a call to my husband while I did have reception to report everything was in order. Back then, it was the start of the COVID lockdown stuff, and I was only just then understanding its effects. I remember telling my husband that I would stay at a hotel that night, since we haven't moved anything into the house yet. And when he told me everything was closed, I didn't believe him at first, but it turned out everything was closed, including the hotel, and the reservations I had were canceled. So at that point, my only option was to go to the house, which had no furniture, but I was still excited about it. The property itself was some 40 acres in the Rocky Mountains, located deep into the National Forest, at about 7,000 feet elevation. It was a historic home, about 100 years old, and recently completely renovated, though there were some oddities such as no real master bedroom. It had a meadow, a trickling, gurgling creek, a pond, forest, and spectacular silence. There was a little snow on the ground at the time, but not too icy. The road to the house was beginning to look familiar to me, as in it already felt like home. Once I was off the highway, it was a 45-minute drive. Why and I arrived as dusk was deepening. This was the first time I'd been on the property without being chaperoned by a realtor. I realized I didn't know how to operate the door locks, but I finally got in. The previous occupant had completely moved out, of course, as when I'd first seen the place there was still a lot of knickknacks, but now it appeared nothing had been left behind. I recall them even having some disturbing-looking artwork, but that was all gone too. That did remind me of something that happened, though. When seeing the place with the realtor at one point tapped me on the arm and nodded towards a painting in the corner. At first glance, I thought it was a guy walking with his dog, but on closer inspection it was a guy carrying a goat head. Weird. I'm glad that one was gone in particular. I noted there was a spotlight in that corner that must have illuminated the painting, but to my surprise I couldn't find a switch to turn it off. The silhouette of the painting could still be seen as the wall was faded around it. Why made the rounds of our new place, upstairs, bathrooms, closets, and now was ready to go. He stood in the entryway and whined. "We're not leaving, silly. We're staying here tonight." I grabbed a few things from the SUV and locked the doors. I didn't even have a sleeping bag, but with a few blankets and my pillow, being so tired, I would be asleep in no time. As I closed my eyes, I was aware that Y sat by me at full attention. He seemed to be panting nervously. "It's just a new place," I told myself. I did fall asleep, but I was eventually awakened by the sound of banging coming from the basement. It sounded as if someone was banging a metal pipe with another metal pipe. Maybe it was just the heating system. I tried to go to sleep again. I became aware that the outdoor lights, which had motion detectors, kept turning on and off, and that metal banging just went on. Y would intermittently bark, but then return to his watchful pose right next to me. By 3 a.m., I was completely unnerved by the banging and decided to drive back home. I got dressed, fumbled with the door locks again, but finally got it secured and left. Overhead, the Milky Way shone brightly, the first time I'd ever actually seen it, thanks to the lack of light pollution out here. My husband and I had a lot of fun. I made a few trips to our dream house in the mountains. Due to COVID, though, our plans for the future changed slightly, and we soon decided we weren't ready to retire, so we wouldn't be moving so soon. Still, we'd have the house out there waiting for us, and we did enjoy staying there on temporary occasions, but it seemed that house had different plans for us. Slowly, odd things began to happen. I never did hear the banging in the basement again. When my husband and I inspected the heating system, only the heating manifold was metal, being made of brass. The rest of it was flexible plastic tubing, so I had no idea how that sound was made. We would awaken some mornings to find the cabinet doors open in the kitchen. Now altogether we have 1 German Shepherd and 2 Malinois. That night all the dogs piled onto the bed with us and wouldn't budge until dawn. At home they slept in different places, but usually not the bed. They also were exuberant about going outside, so if you only hinted at opening the door, there would be 3 eager faces ready to burst through. As I worked around the property during the day and explored it, I made some disturbing discoveries. A marble statue in a remote corner, and evidence of a recent campfire, which worried me that local kids might have done it and risked starting a fire on our land. Closer to the house and some overgrown weeds I was trying to knock down, I found several life-sized plaster human-looking heads on wooden pedestals. The plaster looked familiar, as the previous homeowner had several art projects made from it. As I worked outside, I would stop and admire our home, which was, I thought, so beautiful when we first bought it, but now was taking on a more foreboding look. There was a stone arch under the deck in front of the house that looked like a frown. After a year of owning the house, we decided to sell it mainly for work reasons. The many odd things that happened there made me reluctant to stay by myself if my husband should go out of town. We made sure we kept an open Bible in the upstairs great room, a suggestion from an elder at church. On our last night there, the dogs piled onto the bed as usual. Sometime in the early morning, I woke up to find the front door wide open, which I had personally checked on before going to bed. More concerning is that when I got up to close the door, none of the dogs would budge from the bed. That was the last time I ever saw that house. About a year later, through the grapevine, I heard that it completely burned down. Luckily, no one was injured. As for me, I didn't even feel sad about the news. There was something not quite right about the place. I do think there was some sort of entity occupying that space and time, clearly with a dark side, and I think the dogs could sense it. I don't believe it was a lingering spirit from someone who had died at the home at some point. I think instead it was some sort of entity conjured by the previous owner. Maybe it was disoriented, that we didn't live there full time. I feel lucky we were able to detach ourselves from it, and apart from a few scary stories, it can never affect us again. Story number 4. My friends and I experienced one of the scariest things possible, and I wanted to share it with you. We're currently working in South Texas, far away from my home in California. With our whole crew being between 19 to 32 years old, we love to explore any city we were called to. When we learned of an abandoned courthouse in town, we were psyched to go see for ourselves. We picked a Friday night where we knew we wouldn't have to work the next day, geared up with flashlights and pocket knives, and set out at around 11:30 p.m. Upon arriving, we noticed the whole building was fenced up. We drove around a couple of times, trying to scope out a sneaky entrance. We also noticed every window and door was boarded up on the ground floor, so entering the place was not going to be easy. After parking a few blocks away to not make anything suspicious, we walked to a spot under a bridge overpass, where we thought it would be easy to get past the fence. And sure enough, we managed to make it past the fence without much of a problem. We began to explore around the building. Looking for any openings to get through the boarded windows or doors. Being this close to the building, we got some very eerie vibes from it. The creepy statues surrounding the place, the vines growing on the sides of the building, the darkness of the entire property, it all really had my heart racing. There were at least 2 windows that had the word "help" on the boards covering them. Goosebumps covered my arms after seeing that. We finally picked a window to try and pry open with our pocket knives. We successfully managed to unscrew 6 screws from the board with our knives, but 2 of them wouldn't budge. My co-worker, Rob, began to pull on the board to no success. After a lot of fidgeting and kicking the board, making way too much noise, it caved and we finally had an opening. Immediately we noticed graffiti on the wall of the room we just broke into. It read Diablo in dark red spray paint. Just from being in that room, we could see the whole place was trashed. There were 3 different doorways to pick from to start exploring the building inside that room. We chose the middle doorway, heading to the center of the building. As we saw from the main room, there was trash all over, but a small red light caught all of our attention. After looking at the light closely, we realized it was a motion sensor. We cautiously left that room, keeping a close eye out for more motion sensors. We tried the 3rd room, only to find more of them. After a lot of discussion whether we should just leave or try the 1st room, one of my co-workers began walking to the 1st doorway, so we followed. There we found some stairs and fuse boxes completely cut, and luckily no motion sensors yet. The room was blocked with trash, but there was another doorway. My co-worker, Brian, walked to the doorway first and stopped immediately. We thought he may have found another motion sensor, but he said something very odd. He said there were at least 8 chairs in a perfect circle. He then noted that they were very clean, not a single speck of dust on them. That was very odd, as the place was quite old, trashed, and dusty. We then realized we may have stumbled upon a cult circle. I started walking to see for myself, but I was interrupted by a lot of shushing. I stood there puzzled, but then I heard a faint alarm sound. We knew these rooms we were walking into had no motion sensors. We had been checking as we walked. We noped out of there as quickly as we could. After making it to the truck safely, we were all talking about it, and we came to one conclusion. As we were kicking down the window board to enter, we probably interrupted the cultists during their ritual, and as we got closer to them, they left their circle to hide, tripping a motion sensor. We didn't know who or what tripped it, and we definitely did not want to stick around and find out. Thank you for listening to another unsettling episode. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you.